Hey folks, Colin here from Something's Recording, and welcome back to part 2 of recording a song with the PreSonus AudioBox USB. Okay, so in this video we're going to be going over recording bass and setting levels for that with your AudioBox USB. Okay, so luckily I actually have a spare one that I run with my keyboard rig, so I don't have to move my camera over and show you the one that's hooked up to my computer while I'm recording, okay? Okay, so step one here, we've got our drums, is we want to create a track for our bass, okay? So again, we can do that by pressing T or by pressing the plus button up here, okay? So we're going to call it bass DI because we're going to be recording a DI track here. We only need one. We're going to make it red because bass is red. And we should be good there. Okay, so we're going to pull it down. We don't want it in our drum group, so we're going to pull it out of there. What we will do later is duplicate it and create a pseudo amp track, okay, because we only have two inputs here and we are not miking up our bass cab today, okay? So what we want to do is you want to select your input. Now all my inputs are still set for my Studio Live over here, so what we're going to do is, or what I have done is I've routed my bass input and my guitar input to hit the AudioBox USB, okay? So I have my bass DI, which is usually channel 9 on my Studio Live. That is going to be channel 1 here on our AudioBox, okay? So you got your left and your right, they're channels 1 and channel 2 on your AudioBox USB, okay? And then you have an input gain for each one, okay? So you have a 1 and then you have a 2, okay? So what we're going to do here is we're plugging our bass into channel 1 here, okay? So we have our TRS cable, or our instrument cable, running from our bass guitar into channel 1 of our AudioBox USB, okay? Excuse me. And now what we want to do is we want to set our level, okay? So we're going to play a little bit of bass, do a little bit of level testing, and we're going to adjust our input gain for channel 1 on our AudioBox USB, okay? So I don't need my headphones quite yet, but we're going to pull up our bass here, and we will set levels, and I can actually show you a little bit about tuning inside of Studio One as well, okay? So let's see here. Let's get a little bit of level going. So that's pretty quiet, so we can come over to our inputs here, which are still set to my Studio Live. So here's our bass DI, which is our channel 1 on our AudioBox USB, okay? So I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna lift the gain for channel 1, okay? And again, on our example here, okay, that's this one right here, okay? So we have our channel 1 gain knob, and you just turn that up till you have a good solid level for your bass recording, okay? So let's try that again. We turned it up a little bit. Still pretty quiet. We'll make sure we're all the way up here on our bass, and we will crank it a little bit more over here because we can always turn it up afterwards, but I don't want to clip, so I want to keep it a little bit around like the -12, -10 area, so I have plenty of headroom afterwards. Okay, so now we can talk about tuning because clearly this bass is not in tune. So on your channel here, we don't need the inputs anymore. If you open up your insert section, we can throw our tuner on here. So there's actually a tuner inside of Studio One if you don't have a tuner, or if you're using your DAW. So we can enable this, which is our monitor section. So okay, so now we've got it tuned. And now we can talk about tracking, okay? So I'm gonna turn off monitor because I don't want to hear it through there. I want to monitor straight off the box, okay? So the way you can do that with your AudioBox USB, okay? Instead of monitoring through your DAW where you will get latency and you'll hear that delay between when you're playing and when it's coming out your DAW, is you can switch this knob in the middle. See, there's an input and playback. So you can bounce between hearing only your playback and hearing your input. So if you set it right in the middle there, between playback and between inputs, you can hear both your inputs coming in direct and your playback, okay? So we can hear our drums in our DAW, and we can hear our bass plugged into the front of our interface, okay? So that's the way we can do that there. So if you're not a bass player, if you're by yourself, like I am here at the studio, we've done our programmed drums, right? If you don't have a drummer, you can program your drums, get them sounding good enough, and we'll talk a little bit about doing a little bit of mixing later to make them sound more realistic than these kind of dry program sounding drums, okay? So we'll talk a little bit about recording bass by yourself, okay? So we're gonna go back to a couple bars before we need to start here. Okay, so if you do make any mistakes, which I probably will, I am not a bass player, I'll show you about editing the bass a little bit and maybe grabbing your best sections and looping them through the song, okay? So this song is the same 3 chords all the way through at this point, okay? So let's try this one more time, and we'll actually record this time, okay? So quick shortcut recording, instead of going down here and pressing the big record button, you can actually press the star or the asterisk button on your keyboard, okay? So we have 2 bars before we need to come in, and or actually we can actually start right here with the run up, so we can come back here. Okay, so that wasn't too terrible, right? That wasn't so bad. So now I can come through. I know there was one in the verse that I really liked, and the build-up didn't sound too bad, so we can turn off our click and take a listen to that. Yeah, I don't like that one. Bad. Maybe it's this one. If you aren't a competent player, what you can do is take one section, which is what I'm going to do here. I'm going to nuke all the other ones, and we will just use one section. So what I'm going to do is edit this one section to look pretty good by hand, okay? So we're going to come here. That one looks okay. That one's early though, as we can very clearly see. So we can turn off our snap to grid and follow, and we can do just a little bit of editing here. So we'll pull that guy back till he's good. We will cut there. Pull that one over till it's good. And then we'll pull this back till it kind of lines up in the middle here somewhere. Crossfade these in a second. These need to come back. That one's early, so we can pull that over. That is also early, so we don't need to over edit. We can just line up the bigger parts. That's a little early. As I said, not to over edit. I'm gonna over edit, that's okay. So you see sometimes when I drag pieces over, the other pieces line up pretty good, which is nice. So this last part, we can actually make sure it snaps on the edge there because we don't want it to go over. That piece looks good. Everything else looks pretty good. So now we can make sure we're good here at the beginning. We can add our crossfades just for that section for now, and we'll get to that walk up in a second. So now what we can do here is we can even out our bass a little bit, okay? So we have some notes that are a little bit quieter than others, so we can take our snap to grid and kind of cut in between them and then bring them up. So this section here in the middle was kind of quiet, so we can pull it up. So we screwed up our first fade a little bit here. That's okay. And then this guy here is a little loud, so we can pull him down. So now we've got an even bass tone, as well as it's a little tighter, and then I'll talk about lining it up with your kick and snare in a second, okay? Because right now it's kind of right on the grid, so let's get this fade here at the beginning a little bit better, and then we'll make sure the beginning is locked in. Oh, it's clearly not locked in. So that one's not bad, so we will cut here, line that guy up. We can pull that back a little bit. Those are okay. That one can go a little bit back. That one's good. That one's not bad. And that needs to come back. Okay, so now we'll do our edits here. Same way. We can add our fades in there. And then this section right here is just a touch loud. So we can pull this down in our clip gain, maybe just a dB for now. So yeah, that's a little better. Okay, so we can chop off our beginning part because we don't need that. We can turn our snap to grid back on so we can add our fade appropriately here at the beginning. That one's a little weird. Right there. So we can pull that all the way over. So we can pull our fade in at the end here. Or actually, we'll have to adjust that fade afterwards because we want to get our loop set right. So now what we can do is we can cut here and duplicate this section throughout. Okay? So we take this, put it there. There, 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 there. And all the way through. And now we can go through here, put our fades in, and see if they lined up. It would be very, very nice. And they do. Cool. Awesome. So where are we ending at here? Right here? So we can leave that guy there. Just cut everything afterwards out because that's going to be our end. And we can pull that in. And maybe a more significant fade. Okay, we've got our intro in. So now what we can do is we can save this as a layer in case we ever want to go back and edit it one more time. Just call it edit. I didn't want to see the envelopes. We can make sure the layers don't follow how the events change. And then we can bounce this out and we will move it over to match our kick and snare. So we're going to pull it up in between our kick and snare. Okay, we can change this down to large. So what we can do is we can go here in our verse and we can see they're right on here at the moment. So what you want to do to get your bass to kind of establish that pocket is you want to move it over. Okay, so we'll make a cut here and we'll make a cut here at the end so we can slide our audio a little bit. Okay, So here's our bar. We're just gonna pull our bass back to touch. And we'll see how that matches with our drums. If it's a little too much, we can make it a little bit more subtle and slide it back. There's our pocket. So now I can bounce it out to the bar one more time. So now we got it in, and we can talk about creating our pseudo amp track, okay? So the way I'm doing amp tracks here is pretty much just splitting our frequency spectrum, okay? So I'm gonna duplicate the track completely, and we will call one amp. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna put an EQ on them, okay? So we're gonna go over to effects. We will pull in our EQ, and we're gonna split our frequency spectrum, okay? So here's our DI, and we'll make our DI our low end, okay? So we're gonna use a 24 dB per octave spectrum. And then the same thing, well, the opposite thing on our amp track, right? So we're gonna go up to 180. So this is if we add any distortion on our amp track or our treble track, we won't be distorting our bass. So we can get rid of this marker in the middle. Now the same way we did with our drums, we're gonna create a bus for selected channels. We will call it bass, drag it over, also make it red, and now we have our bass track sending to a bus as well as our drum. Okay, so that is it for part 2 here. We've got our drum set, we've got our bass recorded, we've got our bass edited, lined up with our kick and snare so it's nice and tight, and then we got our levels set for our drums and our bass, so we are ready to track instruments in part 3. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.